Well, it's time to serve you updated stories from the world of business here on Business Incorporated. Here's what we have prepared for you. As the world awaits the details of the reciprocal tariff from President Trump, Africa is also holding on to see the impact it will have. In Kenya, the inflation has surged to 3.6% for the month of March, up from 3.5% in February. Morocco has more savings. Their savings went up 28.8% of GDP in late 2024. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Let's do business. We start from the oil space, where it steadied on Wednesday after falling in the previous sessions on concerns of the new U.S. tariff that's set to be unveiled later on today that could deepen global trade war and limit crude demand. So we see crude for this afternoon, it's down 2 cents, $74.67 a barrel, and WTI is also down at 0.1%, $71.37 a barrel. That's what we have for both of them. And we've seen that the White House has confirmed that President Trump will impose new tariffs today, though it provided no details. We expect to see those details about 4 p.m. U.S. time and 9 p.m. West African time. Additionally, U.S. oil field inventories painted a mixed picture about supply and demand from the world's biggest producer and consumer. And U.S. crude oil inventories rose 6 million barrels in the week ended March 28. That's according to American Petroleum Institute. Gasoline inventories, however, fell 1.6 million barrels, and distillate stocks also dropped by 11,000 barrels. Back here in Nigeria, the President Bola Tinubu has appointed Mr. Bayo Julari, a former Shell executive, to head the state-owned oil firm NNPC Limited as the country seeks to raise oil production and revitalize its refining capacity. Ojulari replaces Mele Kyari. With the appointment, it's effective immediately, according to presidential spokesman Bayo Ononuga. Ojulari was most recently Chief Operating Officer at Nigeria Consortium Renaissance Africa Energy, which now owns Shell's former onshore subsidiary in the country. Prior to that, he was head of Shell's Nigerian Exploration Unit. He will also replace the board of NNPCL, appointing a new 11-member team to drive reforms and boost efficiency in the oil sector. And Nigeria, Angola, and Ghana, they fulfilled their capital commitment towards establishing the Africa Energy Bank. This represents 44% of the minimum required funding for African Petroleum Producers Organization, APO, members there to initiate the bank's operations. Dr. Omar Farouk Ibrahim, Secretary General of APO, announced this during the Congo Energy and Investment Forum. The AEB aims to finance oil and gas projects across the continent, addressing the funding challenges posed by traditional Western financial institutions' reluctance to support fossil fuel initiatives because of environmental concerns. Apple has also requested each of its 18 member states to contribute $83 million, targeting a total initial capitalization of $5 billion. So Angola, Ghana, and Nigeria, and then 5 additional member states that are Algeria, Benin, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Ivory Coast have pledged to make their payments, aligning with the bank's goal to commence operations in the first half of this year. From the oil space, now we go to metals. Gold prices extended their gains today following a record high in previous sessions as investors sought the comfort of the safe haven metal in anticipation of the potential impacts of the reciprocal tariffs. And spot gold we see for this afternoon is up 0.7%, still within that record high, $3,131.25. US gold also up 0.4%. $3,159.90. Spot silver also gained 0.2%, $33,832. And then platinum is also up 0.8% at $987.66. Palladium is also up 0.7% at $990.45. And we see that Trump's tariff policy could flare up inflation, slow economic growth, and escalate trade disputes. And gold, we know, is a hedge against global instabilities. Inflation strives in a low interest country. So I learned we have to go to Makurdi now, the capital of Benue State. That's for our DSTV viewers, but for our viewers on other platforms, we'll continue here on Business Incorporated. Continuing with the program, the federal government has recorded 12.95 trillion naira budget deficit in 2024. This is according to the Central Bank of Nigeria. In its latest quarterly report for the year, the CBN says that the amount represents a 41% increase from its 9.16 trillion naira budgeted deficit for the period. Details of data from the CBN shows that the deficit increased by 0.77% year-on-year against the 12.85 trillion naira recorded in 2023. The Apex Bank notes that FG's expenditure rose 2.22% to 5.6 trillion naira on account of higher personnel costs and interest payments. However, the report says that government's revenue grew by 34.8% year-on-year to 8.55 trillion naira in 2024 on the back of higher crude oil prices and aggressive tax revenue generation drive. And a bit of corporates now. Boa Foods PLC's audited financial statement for the year ended December 31, 2024 shows some good news. We see revenue increased by more than 100% to 1.527 trillion naira. This is the first time this company is hitting this revenue, the 1 trillion mark. So we say congratulations to BOA for this, the first time they're hitting that. Pre-tax profit also went up 162.9% at 284.32 billion. Profit after tax also went up more than 100%, 137.3 at 265.99 billion. Payment of final dividend is at 13 naira for a share. And so I'm sure investors by now would be smiling for this, talking about investors in BOA. And this, they say, is despite, I'm sure some months ago you did hear that not so good news from BOA where 178 billion naira was lost because of currency depreciation. So in spite of that, they say they still have this. Local sales accounted for 95.5% of the company's total revenue last year, underlining the company's dominance in the market, the Nigerian market. The strong performance, however, is attributed to solid demand for the company's core products, sugar, flour, and pasta, as well as increased production capacity, strategic pricing, and deeper market penetration across the country. Now, Nigeria's central bank recently undertook a comprehensive review of the allocation of terminals to pre-shipment inspection agents and their oversight by monitoring and evaluation agents in the crude oil and gas sector. This development has been commended by some key players within the industry following the transfer of the function from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited by the federal government to the Central Bank of Nigeria. As an advocate of Nigeria, Professor Damilola Olawi, who was a guest on Business Morning earlier today, says his expectation for the restructuring by the CBN, which takes effect immediately.
The whole aim is to achieve efficiency, to achieve transparency, and it's also part of an attempt to implement the Petroleum Industry Act, which aims to restructure the way oil and gas business is done in Nigeria. So, in principle, it's a commendable step that aims to block some of the loopholes when it comes to crude oil theft, illicit capital flight, declaring something on paper different from what is being exported. So those are some of the problems we've lamented about over the years. And so it's good to see that the government is taking the necessary steps to bring private sector efficiency in the monitoring process.
And as the world embraces technology and artificial intelligence, there's also the need to understand how these will work for local needs, adapting to cultural context and prioritizing the daily need and tasks that need to be infused into all of this. That's what we're going to discuss next with Mayokun Ogungbola. She's a products designer, joins us virtually to discuss the future of product designing in emerging market. Joins us from the UK. Hi, Mayoko. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. So we talk about AI adoption, technology, every platform everywhere. But I guess it is very important not to miss the fact that all of this are supposed to make living, working easier. Would you say that it's being infused into our daily work, talking about solving challenges, maybe in the African tech ecosystem, for instance?
Yes, I do think so, especially with design thinking. I think it is particularly powerful in emerging markets, like in the Nigerian space and in the African space, because we're looking about human-centered solutions, and that is exactly what we need. In Africa, we have very unique challenges because it's very diverse, it's fast-moving, there is resource constraints, and so we need to think about the local context of everything. The African user base is diverse, not just in language, but in access to resources and in technology. And with using design thinking, we can deeply understand the user's needs. So whether they're in a city with good internet access or in a rural area with no electricity. And also this approach encourages empathy. And so we get to the heart of the frustrations, the desires, the realities of the users. So if we think about platforms like Childtech, Pharmacy, Flutterwave, and other companies using tech to solve problems in different ecosystems, they've had to tackle some very unique challenges also. And we're also talking about iteration and testing and collaboration, which is very crucial because the ecosystem is evolving, like you said, with AI and all of that. And we need to bring diverse perspectives together. So I think it's really helpful in solving Africa's tech challenges, and also will help us create solutions that would adapt to our real needs, and also developing and fostering a deeper connection for users of the product.
Yeah, so you talked about the uniqueness of Africa. What are some of those unique features that, I mean, individuals like yourself, product designing, that you infuse or you think should be infused into products that can be easily adapted, to Africans? So you look at our uniqueness, our culture, and our own special challenges that we have on the continent.
Yes, so like localizing the user experience of the people using the product is not only a design strategy, but also an economic strategy. And it can make a difference between a product that would thrive or a product that would fail. For instance, we deal with very expensive and unreliable internet access. So if your app, for instance, is heavy and requires constant high internet speed, people simply won't use it. And so creating apps and platforms that optimize for low data usage is a win. For instance, Facebook Lights, which was designed for markets with slow internet so that they can use less data, less storage. And another unique challenge is the multilingual culture in Africa. We have over 2,000 languages, and many products only launch with English and French. And that creates a huge accessibility gap. So there was this study by Kudi, which is now Number, which is a fintech company in Nigeria, and they showed that when they introduced more localized onboarding systems, their adoption rates skyrocketed, and people felt that the product was designed for them, and so they trusted it more. So at the core of everything is a simple truth that if people cannot access and understand your products, they won't use it. So businesses that prioritize localization in whatever way can tap into a massive underserved market. So it's not just about good design, but how good design helps with economic growth and business sustainability.
Very interesting. I like, the language one and then the low bandwidth, because the truth is, on the continent, we're still dealing with internet penetration. But
Yeah.
I ask, these products, are they produced or initiated by Africans? Always be, you mentioned Facebook Lights, and it's still something that we're importing. It would be very interesting to have, you know, locals, Africans, actually initiate and produce these products.
Yes, we've had that happen nowadays. We can see it with the startups the Flutterwave, the pay stacks, the pharmacies, the child decks. People are creating in a way that would impact and help their people. And with this way, they bring a special and unique perspective that is needed only not in Nigeria or Africa, but also globally. And we have to be strategic and intentional about such approaches.
So with this now, what opportunities would you say African designers have?
I would say today's market is completely different compared to when I started my career, like almost 4 years ago. Back then, the opportunities were much easier. You could break in by just passion and connecting with the right people. And while those things matter, the landscape has become much more challenging. For instance, we are seeing an employer's market, we're seeing tougher government policies, especially internationally, and companies are pulling back from hiring internationally. And like a lot of big names, Google, Amazon, Adobe, they've rolled out return to office policies. So international remote roles are much more easier, harder to come by rather. So it's harder, but it's not impossible, meaning that the approach to these opportunities have to change. We have to play a whole different game. And I would say to start with mastering the craft. It is not a time for scattered learning. The competition is fierce. You're competing globally. And so you need to be solid in your skills. Being a generalist can help because companies are looking at people that can wear multiple hats. And even as a specialist, you have to be really grounded in your skills to stand out in your role. And another way is to prove your impact. So employers have to see the impact you've made in previous roles. And truthfully, that would be harder for people starting out in product design, but considering volunteering and interning at even small companies would help to gain this experience and build a track record. And last two things, it's networking intentionally. A lot of jobs nowadays come through referrals. For instance, when a job is posted on LinkedIn, there are like 1,000 applications in the first hour. And a good way to stand out is to know someone in the company that can refer you directly to the recruiting manager. And so that can really help. And leveraging the internet, not just do great work, you have to post your project. I've known people that because of their visibility, by posting their work, they've been hired. So at the end of the day, we African designers can actually compete globally, but we have to be intentional about how we approach it and also how we showcase our work and impact.
Yeah, but when you say it's more difficult, is it because supply is more now? Now you have more individuals who are interested in those international remote work, or is it because it's now more regulated? Is that why it's more difficult?
I would say the supply is more to start with. We saw a big boom with like the startup booms that happened, and also with 2020 happening, a lot of recruiters were looking for people internationally because there was a lot of spike in business and they needed people to also fill in those roles. But nowadays, you are competing with people in those countries that the companies are based in, and you in Africa with your limited resources, your bad internet access also. And so the supply has made it more of an employer's market because the employer can choose anybody out of the amount of people out there applying for their work. So the regulation, on the other hand, like policies coming from the government, also with like tax and all of that, can has also influenced this so far. But a big part, I would say, is the increase in supply of talent compared to the amount of companies out there hiring.
So, looking at it broadly now, how much contribution do you think the continent can expect from this product designing, international remote work, back into the continent? How much contribution?
I would say we have a lot to contribute. We offer a very unique perspective, but I feel like we should start building from home and not just only focus for international remote work. Building internally will help us show the continent and those outside the continent what we are made of, which is very good things. And we can also compete globally with any company out there.
Thank you so much, Mayo Ogungbola, products designer. For your perspective, wish you the best. Represents Nigeria well where you are.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, we head to the markets. Right here on Business Incorporated. Please stay with us. Welcome back to watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. Anita comes in now With market numbers, Anita, okay, you have intraday numbers today.
Yeah.
Thank God.
And I think it's actually the first trading day for some markets.
Like
not-
Nigeria,
yeah,
for the
Nigeria.
quarter, for the month.
Exactly. But it's actually not the first for Nairobi Stock Exchange as well as Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It's actually the first for Nigeria. But yesterday we saw Johannesburg Stock Exchange trading in the green, but we've seen that color not being sustainable into midweek trading session. So, but let's talk deeper about the intraday market activities. Nigeria stock market, after that 2 days official break, that's from the Eid al-Fitr holiday, Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, it's a negative opening for the month of April, as well as a very negative start, a negative push for the second quarter of 2025. That's had 0.04%, but it's still able to hold on to the 105,000 points, which it left as at Friday last week. And so far, we know that investors are saying that there's several factors that could influence the performance in the coming months. This include rising interest rate, weak disposable income, large volume of shares in the circulation, which comes from the last capital raise. These are most of the potential challenges that would affect the equities market, the domestic equities market, in the coming months so far. So let's see how that market will react to this, as well as corporate earnings for the first quarter and leftover of some full year 2024 earnings report. So that's it for Nigeria stock market. For the Johannesburg stock market, we see a little bit of pullback. Okay, so fast fingers there. But we see the EGX 30. This is still from last week, where we saw the EGX 30 closing Thursday's trading session in the green with a market cap of about, in dollar term, that's about $44.47 billion. And then in the Egyptian pounds, that's about some 2.248 trillion Egyptian pounds. So far, the month of March was actually a pull into the green for the Egyptian Stock Exchange. We see it unchanged. This is just a number, it's still reveling in that Muslim holiday. For the close of Tuesday's trading session, that's yesterday, just as I mentioned, it was a 0.6% uptick for the Nairobi Stock Exchange All-Share Index, and guess what? It has left the 130 level into 131.59, but still within the hundreds, not in the thousand that we see in other major markets that we track, both at intraday and across the African region. Okay, so out of Africa to the Middle East, where we see that the major indexes there, it's kind of a mixed trading there. So far, it is only the Dubai index as well as the Abu Dhabi index, both on the United Arab Emirates, that are trading at intraday. The Dubai was up while the Abu Dhabi was down. And talking about the UAE, we have some important news here that the petrol prices is going to drop sharply in this month. This follows the increase. The last time we saw an increase was in February. So that's it. And at the same time, for the Dubai real estate sector reports have it that it saw about $4.15 billion worth of transactions and about 3,531 just last week. Then let's move over to Saudi Arabia, where we see this is still the close for Saudi Arabia, the Tariff as a Thursday, and the Qatari Stock Exchange All-Share Index. This is the number that we've been tracking since last week, 0.46 for both, just 0.46 apiece. Now, talking about Saudi Arabia, we have it that U.S. President Donald Trump is the man of the first quarter, if you put it that way, Mr. Tariff, as you would call him. But this time he's going to make his first official foreign visit to 3 countries within the Middle East. That's talking about Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, as well as Qatar, where the first stop will be in Saudi Arabia, where he's that's for his second term. That's the first visit there within his second term, where he's expected to sign agreements worth about $1 trillion for the U.S. economy. And this would include the purchase of military equipment that's within the Saudi Arabian government if that agreement comes into fruition. At the same time, similar agreements are expected to be signed in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. So we know that Saudi Arabia has played a very prominent role in U.S. foreign policy, including hosting U.S. ceasefire talks between Ukraine and Russia. So that's a wrap for the markets within the Middle Eastern region. But now let's go back to Nigeria's markets. This time we're talking about the fixed income markets, where we have our eyes on the Q1 performance Q1 is just some few days ago. We left the Q1, now in the second quarter. But we're going to have a review of the Q1 numbers. And let's bring in Ayomide Adeson, a fixed income dealer with FSDH Merchant Bank, to give us details about that and the projections for the second quarter of the year. Thank you for joining us, Ayomide.
Yeah, hi Anita, good afternoon.
Yeah, okay, so welcome back from that holiday that you had. Okay, so now, my first question, I want to ask the targets that was set up by the Debt Management Office as well as the Central Bank for the bond and the NTB issuance, was it met within the first quarter?
Oh, yes, it was definitely met. In fact, I think it surpassed it. So for the bonds, we had about 1.2 trillion on offer, and 1.93 trillion was allotted. And in the NCB space, we had about 5.11 trillion on offer, and 5.53 trillion was sold at the auction. Even in the OMO space as well, we saw the same thing. There was about 2.3 trillion on offer for 4.57 trillion is sold. So yeah, they basically oversold in the first quarter.
Okay, so now my second question, it's always the yield environment that investors look at in terms of investment within the fixed income space. But what were the key drivers behind this, the yield environment? We know CBN policy affects it, inflation, investor, what were the factors?
Well, in Q1, I think there are three major factors that affected yields. We saw the inflation figures. So, there was the rebasing that was done. Then we also had some activities from the DMO, and then there was the MPC meeting that was held in February, right? So on the rebasing, we saw January inflation figure print at 24.48% from 34.80 in December. That was over 100 basis point drop. So of course, that median yields go lower. At the MPC meeting as well, all parameters were held, including the asymmetric corridor. So I think that sort of had an effect in markets as well. So that was the first time that they were holding. We had seen them hike, progressively last year. So for the first time, they decided to hold. So yes, markets also interpreted that as an indication for yields to go lower. The DMO also did some changes to the calendar. So on the bond calendar, we had a new issue, the 2035 bond, with a coupon of 22.6%. They sold that in the January auction. It was meant to come on February as well, but they took it off the calendar. And then we saw a short squeeze in the market. So yeah, that also drove markets significantly lower, about 100 to 150 basis points. And then in the NTB space, we saw them bring a supplementary auction. So there was an auction that was not even on the calendar at all for Q1 in NTB, and they had brought that and we started to see rates move back up a bit. So yeah, it's been mixed signals from the DMO. But what we saw most of Q1 was, yields going lower, and with inflation sprinting lower, we just saw investors coming in to buy, and we saw this play out significantly at the February auction. The DMO was able to basically oversell about 900 billion as against the 300 billion that they had on offer. So yeah.
Okay, all right. So now this is going to be a two-pronged approach question, my friend, which is I'm starting with this is the first trading day for April as well as the start for the second quarter. Are you anticipating any change in market regulation that could influence the trading activities? And then, what's your outlook for the second quarter?
I think the major thing that we have coming up is the MPC meeting in May. I believe that between now and then we should have about 2 inflation figures printed, and I feel that would greatly influence the decision of the committee. But there's also the global side. Markets is basically waiting for Trump's announcements today on a method to his tariffs, right? But regardless, as long as these tariffs are going to hold, I believe that market is going to translate that as we're going to see a lot of inflationary pressure, right? And with that, it might just mean that the Feds might, be, they might not be, so willing to cut rates, right? And if we're going to see that on a global level, I think that might also influence our own decisions as well. On a macro level, right? So I believe that those are some factors that the committee will put into consideration. If we're going to be seeing global inflation, I don't see them being very keen on cutting rates, which is what markets is expecting. I believe that we might just see them hold again, right? But of course, that contradicts what I expect on our own inflation rates, right? I expect that our own inflation rates should taper down with the rebasing, right? So yeah, I guess it's something that would see would have more clarity by the May MPC meeting, right? But for the bond space, I do expect that we might see some new issues. This is because the shelf life for the securities on offer it's already above 2 trillion. So I mean, before December, right? Shelf life on most securities used to be about 1.7 trillion. But the 2029s and the 2033s, which are on offer right now on the calendar, the 2029 has already talked about 2.23 trillion on in circulation. The 33s as well. We have about 2.09 trillion in circulation, right? So I believe that the maximum we would see in circulation will be about 2.5 trillion. So they might just replace those with maybe the 2030 or 2032. Reason being, it seems focus has been at the mid end of the curve. So if you look at it on the 2030, we only have about 500 billion in circulation. So I really, if I just bring a new 2030 security being 5 years, and then maybe a 2032 being 7 years. I think that's my outlook for Q2.
I'm sure investors are really eyeing out for your projection for the second quarter and knowing how to make their position within the fixed income market. Thank you so much for your view on our show.
Thank you, Annette.
And that was Ayomide Adesonya, fixed income dealer with FSDH Merchant Bank. Okay, it's what we've been, the D-Day announcement of U.S. President Donald Trump, Mr. Tariff, this is about 71 days in office, counting down in his first 100 days in office, which is later at the end of this month, April 30th to be precise. Now, in reaction to that, the much-awaited tariff announcement, which is coming just about some hours away, this is how the futures, that's the opening, before the opening bell, how the markets have been trading. Dow Jones Industrial Average as well as the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ in the red. Overnight, they were mixed, but the futures are pointing to a red. This is because investors are bracing for the expected rollout of U.S. President Donald Trump's that tariff, which, of course, healthcare stocks have been impacted. Auto stocks have been impacted. The treasury yields in the U.S. have also been impacted. Now, besides that tariff announcement, the traders are also looking ahead to what they call the ADP employment report for March, which is scheduled to be released just a couple of hours away from now within the U.S. And the projection is that the private companies added about 120,000 jobs last month, which is going to be higher than the projection of about 77,000 jobs which was created sometime in February. So that's a snap for the markets within the U.S. So all eyes on the U.S. market. And finally, for the Asian markets, we see that those markets have been able to kind of brush aside let's take a look at Asia markets, how it happened. Okay, that's it there. Kind of a mixed picture there. Nikkei has been able to make some rebound there. Yesterday, we told you that Japan, South Korea, as well as China, they've signed a regional pact to talk about how they can form that alliance to counter any tariff. But let's talk about how the markets closed on Wall Street for Tuesday. Mary Bird gives us details of that.
The U.S. stock market was mixed on Tuesday as the Dow Jones was just below flatline at 0.03% down, and the S&P 500 rose slightly at 0.4% up. And the heavy tech Nasdaq rose as well as 0.9% up, even though the day was up and down as investors were concerned by the president's announcement on Wednesday of tariffs. These global tariffs are ones that we have been watching to see how they could have an impact on the U.S. economy, and specifically around if the stock market will have any type of adverse effects. Only time will tell, and we'll continue to see what will happen over the next few days as a result of the tariff announcements.
I watched the correspondent Maria Bird giving us an overview of the closing figures within the U.S., which I mentioned earlier. We just had to have lately. So any tariff, it's also coming into Africa when those three Sahel states mentioned that they're imposing 0.5% tariff on their former members in ECOWAS.
Yeah, well, surprisingly, there hasn't been any reaction from Nigeria or any other government as of now, but I guess perhaps the trade is not very frequent. When it gets to implementation, we would know or get some reactions on that.
I'm sure there's going to be a reaction because some analysts I spoke with, they said, yeah, just expect that.
All right, thank you so much, Anita.
Pleasure.
Well, we're still talking tariff now. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said that they are ready. They have a strategy to retaliate against that tariff that's expected to be announced by President Donald Trump later on today. Chiponda is closed there, and I guess that he has heard some of the strategies that will be shared, and he joins us now. Hi, Chip. Good afternoon. Share a bit of this strategy that the EU has against this new set of tariff that's expected today. Perhaps we can learn a thing or two about it.
Well, Ini, all eyes are obviously on that tariff announcement, and EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen said that Brussels will protect its interests, people and companies, and she also stressed that a negotiated solution is preferable to a trade war. So it is actually clear that the Europeans are leaving the door open for talks with Washington. Now, with EU-US trade close to $1 trillion, the bloc is probably the only market that could deliver a meaningful response to those US tariffs. And going by what von der Leyen said on Tuesday, it does look like Brussels has tried to get its ducks in a row. And its aim will be to calibrate the response once Washington does make that announcement later today.
Yeah, what can we expect from that response?
Well, we do know that U.S. President Trump, for him, these tariffs are meant to address the goods trade deficit with the European Union. But of course, it is worth noting that the United States actually enjoys a services trade surplus with the bloc. And that is something that we could very well see Brussels target in its response. Now, big tech, so that is Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google parent, Alphabet, and Facebook, they could be potentially targeted because the European Union is a major market for their services. And it isn't just the tech sector that is at risk should Brussels choose to target services in its response. U.S. banks, too, could be included. So we could very well see the discussion on tariffs expanding beyond goods to include services as well, Ini. And on another note, of course, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is actually expected to be in Brussels for a NATO meeting this week. So it will be interesting to see what kind of reception he receives in Europe. Now, the focus of that meeting is Ukraine and the threat of China in the Indo-Pacific region. But it is hard to imagine that tariffs will not be coming up, especially given that they are probably on everyone's minds right now. And these tariffs, of course, are expected to be the biggest disruption in global trade in decades.
Yeah, true, Chip, because I mean, when you talk about the services sector, then you start talking about individual consumers, employment, and all of that. And obviously doesn't look good at all for the world, not just for the EU or for the United States. So we'll see how that goes. But let's turn our attention to the markets now. How are stocks?
Yeah, Ini, of course, the disruption could be a major deal, and we are seeing that markets are reacting even before an announcement has been made, and they are trading lower here in Europe. Now, investors are, of course, on edge, and it is showing the Euro Stoxx 600 is actually down 0.9%, and the major indices in London, Paris, and Frankfurt are all down between 0.8% and 1.6%, Ini. So the tariffs, of course, are expected to be a major disruption to global trade, and that has, of course, raised fears of a global recession recession as well. Now, the tariffs on steel, aluminum, and the auto industry have already been affecting market sentiment. And of course, that is something that has sent gold soaring to record highs as investors seek safe haven. And of course, they're not just keeping eyes on the tariff announcement, it is also the responses that are expected from the EU, China, and other markets. So those retaliatory tariffs are also something to think about, Eni.
Yeah, a lot to think about, but all centers around tariff. Thank you so much, Chip. We'll see how that goes tomorrow after the announcement tonight.
Yeah, we'll be watching out for that as well here. See you tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, we're still talking tariff now. South Africa, which is a key player in global automotive industry, exporting top models like Volkswagen, Polo, Mercedes, C-Class, Toyota, Hilux, and all of that. Last year alone, the country's vehicle and component export totaled approximately 270.8 billion rands, with 10% destined for the United States. So you can imagine that it is also a major topic, talking about the tariff on the mind of South Africans. That's why our correspondent Innocent Semosa put together this report on expectations ahead of that announcement tonight.
The tariff increase raises concerns over job security within South Africa's auto industry, foreign investment, confidence, and the broader economic impact on a sector that employs thousands. Founder of Magwe Fund Managers, Magwe Masilela, says Trump's trade war is accelerating Africa's push towards economic independence. He views this as a wake-up call for the continent.
The escalation of the global trade war that we know that has been started by Donald Trump, it's more of a wake-up call, not just for us as South Africa, but I think for everyone, that as much as we were appreciating the issue of globalization has to be in such a way that we don't just rely or depend on one or two countries. So it's just a serious wake-up call for us.
Masilela says industry leaders and government officials should engage in discussions to explore possible response, including trade negotiations and diversification into new markets. But how critical has AGOA been in maintaining South Africa's automotive trade with the US? And could these tariffs undermine its benefits?
The issue of AGOA, it has been very helpful, not just on citrus food, but also on manufacturing of our vehicles, parts and accessories. And hence, the government once had a very good program when it comes to supporting the motor vehicle industry.
As this policy takes effect, all eyes will be on how South Africa navigates this new trade landscape and what strategies the industry will adopt to mitigate the potential fallout. One thing is clear: adaptability will be key in ensuring the country's automotive sector remains resilient and globally competitive. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Semosa, Channels Television News.
That's right, the tariff fever everywhere. So still in South Africa, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has announced substantial reductions in fuel prices effective midnight today. So petrol is going to be about 93, would drop by 58 cents per litre, while petrol 95 ULP will decrease by 72 cents per litre. Diesel users will also benefit. Diesel, which is 0.05% sulfur, will reduce by 83.80 cents per litre, and diesel that has 0.005 sulfur will be reducing by 85.80 cents per litre. Further good news includes reduction in the wholesale and single maximum national retail price of illuminating paraffin, which will decline by 81.70 cents per litre, while the R1.14 per litre respectively for gas prices. And so it's a bit of relief for South Africans at this time. But it's not for Kenya, because the annual inflation rate went up to a 6-month high of 3.6% in March 2025 from 3.5% in the previous month. Still, inflation remains below the 5% midpoint of the central bank's target range for the 9th consecutive month. On a monthly basis, consumer prices were up 0.4% in February, slightly accelerating from 0.3% that it was in January. According to the KNBS Director General, McDonald Obudo, that the increase was largely influenced by price hikes in food and non-alcoholic beverages, as well as transport sectors over the past month. And still in Kenya, that country is seeking eco-friendly vehicles and now have access to Africa's first hybrid electric vehicle battery laboratory. And that's going to be in their capital, Nairobi. The facility, launched by Japan's Vehicle Service Center in partnership with Cars Kenya Limited, will provide essential services such as battery testing, analysis, and reconditioning to support the growing demand for hybrid vehicles in the country. And from there, we go to, in a bit, to tackle the city's growing transportation challenges. Addis Ababa City Administration has launched 100 modern electric buses into service. The initiative is to reduce the burden of public transportation shortages and enhance commuter convenience. The new buses are equipped with intelligent transport system and fare collection system technology, ensuring a more organized and efficient public transport system. The switch to electric buses will also significantly cut down on fuel expenses. That is one of the motivations for that. And then in Morocco, the national savings rate has increased by 28.8% of the GDP. That's for the fourth quarter of 2024. And it's up from 28.2% in the same period of the previous year, that's 2023. This is according to recent reports by the High Commission for Planning. This growth occurred despite a slowdown in national final consumption, which increased by 4.9% at the current prices compared to 5.7% in the previous year. The report also highlights a decrease in GDP growth from 8.4 in the fourth quarter of 2023 to 6.2 the fourth quarter of 2024. Net income from the rest of the world rose by 0.9%, leading to a decrease in the growth rate of the gross domestic national disposable income to 5.8%, and that's down from 8.7%. Head to the crypto space now. Yesterday we saw a green color. What do we see today? Well, it's retained that color. That's what we see today. Prices are, of course, a bit higher than what we had this time yesterday, 84,851.86. Does it mean that the red day is over? I wonder if Bitcoin is also reacting to the tariff. Well, Bitcoin is in green, but Ethereum, XRP, and a whole lot more of the altcoins are still in the red at this time. So let's see some stories making the headlines. We see stablecoin issuer Circle files for IPO as public markets to open crypto up. So do you want to be a part of that? Instead of just buying coins, you're also buying to that company. Well, the prospective file with SEC lays the groundwork for Circle's long anticipated entry into public market. We see crypto making its way slowly, but it seems surely to the minds of many investors and non-investors, winning some space there inch by inch. Then in UAE, yesterday we talked about how high hawking is, the impact is having, negative impact is having on crypto community and sentiment. Well, UAE is launching a path for global initiative to tackle massive crypto theft. That's in the United Arab Emirates. So they're looking to tap $40 billion market with biometrics access card for digital currency storage and transactions. Well, the UAE will be the test ground for what is billed as a global first initiative to take on the multi-billion-dollar menace of cryptocurrency hacking. And then also we have GameStop announcing that it has a $1.48 billion ready for BTC purchases. These are the guys, the institutional investors who would drive the price back up, but I don't know if they're strong enough at this time. So GameStop said they have $1.48 billion to buy BTC, hinting at a major crypto move purchase right there. Let's see what Olumide has to say with this. Hi, Olumide. Good afternoon and welcome to the program. Hello, Lumide, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good
Great.
afternoon. Thanks
Good
for having me.
afternoon. How are you preparing for the tariff announcement today?
Well, I think the market is reacting. Expectations are that Donald Trump will maximize the levy on powerful trading partners, and that could trickle down at inflationary pressure, which makes appetite for risk moderated, and also definitely affect the crypto market. I think the jury is out already. In Q1, we saw gold having the best quarter run since 1986, and you're looking at Ethereum losing about half its value in quarter one. Many altcoins also dipping, particularly meme coins, losing as much as 80%. So it's not it's been very parabolic, liquidity exodus has increased, particularly in altcoins, though we're seeing strong appetite in Bitcoin. Bitcoin's moderation from the all-time high hasn't been that bad. So we could still call it a market correction, not bearish market, but definitely many altcoins are already DBS. And we just wait to see what the president will say this afternoon.
Yeah, but so do you see this 1.48 billion attempt or purchase plan by GameStop? Do you see it changing the course of the price or anything?
I think that really might just be symbolic because the world's most powerful man is about to speak, and definitely his speech has implication about inflows, outflows. Bitcoin is $1 trillion asset, and the amount you're talking about doesn't even meet 10% Bitcoin's trading volume. However, definitely growing institutional adoption will play a role. But what we've seen is that there's a positive correlation between US stocks and crypto market, and that makes it a bad edge, particularly in terms of uncertainty. Don't forget that a lot of Nigerians are exposed in the crypto assets, and they've got their figures burnt in Q1, particularly the fact that they were trying to edge against the naira and the devaluation of the local currency. So I think what bookmakers are looking at is how bad will Bitcoin get to. A downward reach below 75,000 definitely will take the altcoins out. But if the news is not as bad as anticipated, I expect Bitcoin to consolidate and try to claim 85,000 within a matter of days.
Okay, Olumide, so I guess it's one direction for all of us in the world. It's the White House and what will come out of the mouth of President Donald Trump. And then we'll see if it's already been priced in or more reactions from the markets. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
All right, so let's go home and turn on our television, put on YouTube, whichever way you want to watch President Donald Trump, 9 p.m. tonight, and see what the reciprocal tariff will look like and who it will affect the most. And then we'll talk about it tomorrow, yeah? So that's it. That's how much we can do on Business Incorporated today. It's a fresh start from tomorrow. But tonight, we'll see how the NGX closes. Hopefully, by then, we wouldn't have heard from President Trump and the markets will do good. Yeah? We'll keep our fingers crossed. I'm Uni John. Bye-bye.